Greetings, mortals. Canada. Cold, quiet, colossal. A land of still lakes and unbroken woods. But silence is not safety. Tonight, we venture into the forgotten margins of the map. A valley where heads go missing without reason. A city buried in hysteria and shadow. A crash in a sea that never left a trace.
They call it the Valley of the Headless Men. Tucked deep in the Mackenzie Mountains of the Northwest Territories, the Nahanni Valley seems untouched. Jagged peaks, boiling springs, and skies so clear they hum. It should be paradise, but paradise doesn't leave corpses without heads. In 1908, Frank and Willie McLeod left Fort Liard chasing a gold rumor whispered by an old prospector. They built rafts, braved rapids, and vanished into the valley. 2 years later, their skeletons were found by a search party near the confluence of the Flat and South Nahanni rivers. Their bodies were intact. Their heads were not. The RCMP report was blunt. Cause of decapitation unknown. 1917. Martin Jorgensen, a seasoned trapper from Sweden, set up camp upriver. He was methodical, kept a logbook, and was last seen purchasing supplies. In the spring thaw of 1918, his cabin was found burned to the ground. His headless body lay in the ashes, still clutching a rusted rifle. 1918. A miner named John O'Brien disappeared without a trace. His campsite was found, his gear untouched, his fireplace still warm. 1919. Prospector Phil Powers was discovered dead in his cabin, charred and missing his head. The Mounties again called it accidental. Locals weren't so sure. These aren't just folklore. They're in the records. RCMP logs, newspaper snippets, fragments sealed in faded archives. Between 1908 and 1945, at least 44 documented disappearances or deaths occurred in the valley. Of these, a striking number involved mutilation, inexplicable fires, or missing body parts. But the Dean people knew the valley long before colonists came with maps and greed. In Diné oral history, the region was home to the Naha, described as a mountain-dwelling tribe who vanished centuries ago. Some believe they were wiped out in battle. Others say they simply disappeared into something else. A fissure, a fold in reality. The name Nahanni itself may derive from these vanished people, those who fled or were taken. Some elders spoke of the mountain that whispers, a ridge near Deadman Valley where even birds fall silent. Others mention the eyes beneath the ice, beings that emerge only during specific lunar cycles to reclaim what was once theirs. And still, people return. During the 1960s, multiple expeditions tried to debunk the mystery. A joint geological survey lost a team of 3 for 6 days. When they emerged, all refused to speak on record. A private journal entry by one member, later leaked, reads simply, "Everything echoed, even my thoughts." In the 1980s, a documentary crew attempted to shoot a wilderness special titled The Lost Gold of the Nahanni. Only 11 minutes of footage were recovered. The rest was found water damaged, though the camera equipment was dry. The final clip, a shot slowly panning toward the tree line. No movement, no sound, until static overtakes the tape. Fast forward to 2014. A drone research team lost contact with their equipment 14 minutes into a flight over Glacier Lake. GPS coordinates froze mid-transmission. Recovery efforts failed. 2 weeks later, a second drone mission found a strange clearing, perfectly circular, with burned grass at its center and no animal tracks leading in or out. Theories abound. Some suggest naturally occurring infrasound, low-frequency vibrations from shifting rock that induce panic and hallucinations. Others blame methane pockets, magnetic anomalies, or secret Cold War installations. More speculative researchers claim the entire valley is a kind of natural gateway, a magnetic vortex where space and time distort. A former RCMP officer, now retired and anonymous, claimed in a private interview, "There are places you don't write reports about. Nahanni is one of them. We weren't supposed to ask why." To this day, local guides refuse to enter Deadman Valley without ceremony. Some insist on carrying traditional medicine bundles. Others recite Dean prayers for protection. The Canadian government has designated Nahanni National Park as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Brochures celebrate its rugged beauty and geological wonders. They do not mention the burned cabins, the skeletons, the whispers in the trees. Why would they? After all, what's more terrifying than a place that kills you? A place that erases you. Local newspapers of the 1940s painted it plainly. Another trapper gone. No signs but an empty canoe and boots by the river. These weren't isolated headlines. They were a pattern, and not just near Deadman Valley. In 1946, a geologist named Alistair Gray vanished while mapping mineral deposits for a mining firm. His last note read, "Hearing a low hum near the cliffs again. Instruments reacting oddly. Might be static, but feels personal." 1953. A bush pilot crash-landed just outside Rabbit Kettle Hot Springs. He survived the wreck but fled barefoot into the forest, abandoning rations and flare guns. When found days later, he was muttering in circles, "Can't sleep. They're standing too close. Can't see them, but they see me." Then there was 1962. RCMP patrols intercepted a lone hiker wandering near Lafferty Creek. Disoriented and refusing to explain how he arrived, the man was held overnight for questioning. One officer, now deceased, allegedly took notes that ended with, "Subject spoke in Dean dialect, but claimed no knowledge of the language. Eyes unfocused. Kept drawing spirals." Not all reports made it to the public. A partially declassified RCMP memo from 1965, redacted but still legible in parts, warns of disturbing frequency of high-elevation disappearances, and notes unusual magnetic readings near Rabbit Kettle Ridge. That same year, a missionary group attempted to build a chapel near First Canyon. Construction halted within 2 weeks due to equipment failures and what was described as constant mechanical interference. Their final transmission, recorded on magnetic tape, captured an eerie static interruption, followed by a deep rhythmic pounding, like drums or a heartbeat. Many believe the valley mirrors other dead zones in Canada, areas like the Great Divide in British Columbia or the woods near Lake Anjikuni, where entire communities have reportedly vanished. Some researchers draw comparisons between these cases, pointing to anomalous geomagnetic fields and sudden drop-offs in wildlife activity. Others reach further. One fringe theorist, Dr. Callum Rafe, argues that the Nahanni Valley is a kind of acoustic echo chamber created by ancient crystalline structures beneath the mountains, capable of generating frequencies that alter perception, time, and even memory. "The land," he writes, "doesn't trap bodies, it edits stories. And the stories keep mutating." A 2019 podcast documented 3 tech influencers who disappeared while live streaming a hike through the South Nahanni. Their phones kept recording after they vanished from frame. Static, then shadowed shapes moving just at the edge of the forest line. Their voices are last heard whispering, "Did you hear that? It's behind us." None were found, only their phones, perfectly preserved in a hollow tree. Even to this day, visitors speak of feeling watched, of sudden temperature drops, of hearing their names called from deep within the brush. A handful report waking up to find their tents repositioned, hundreds of feet from where they were staked the night before. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain: the Nahanni Valley doesn't give back what it takes. And if you listen closely, very closely, beneath the wind, past the birds, past the rivers, you might hear it too. That hum, that breath, waiting. Montreal, 1984. A child screams in a daycare. A parent calls the police. And what begins as a simple welfare check becomes a spark in a city soaked in gasoline. Allegations of abuse, whispers of ritual, children talking about candles, red robes, and secret tunnels, parents terrified, journalists silent. The seeds of satanic panic had reached Quebec, and they would bloom in blood. The story parallels the infamous McMartin preschool case in California. But unlike the US, where courtroom drama played out on national TV, the Montreal cases were swallowed in shadow. Police records were sealed. Local media gave it a name, and then gave it nothing at all. It began with the Les Enfants du Soleil daycare in the Plateau Mont-Royal district. Staff were accused of ritual abuse after several children described ceremonies involving men in masks, dark rooms under the school, and cutting animals. Drawings surfaced. Confessions were taped. One child's account claimed, "We saw the devil, and he said we couldn't tell." The building was searched. Dogs were brought in. And allegedly, ground-penetrating radar revealed gaps beneath the concrete floor, what some claimed were tunnel entrances. Police denied the findings, but construction permits from 1971 listed substructure anomalies. An investigative memo from that year, obtained decades later, noted, "Unusual vaulting discovered, possibly religious or private." Still, no charges were filed. The children were declared confused. Their testimony, labeled as implanted, their parents deemed hysterical. But the stories didn't stop. More daycares, more claims. Some spoke of rooms with no windows. Others described rituals held in church basements. A retired priest, speaking anonymously in 1998, claimed a local parish was compromised during the early 80s. There were groups, he said, and they weren't praying to God. Church groups and fringe religious coalitions fanned the flames. Flyers warned of child sacrifices and secret cults operating within Montreal's elite. Tabloid newspapers ran headlines like "The Devil in the Daycare" and "Montreal's Ritual War," only to quietly pull them from shelves days later. No retractions, just silence. But the rumors weren't harmless. In 1986, a social worker named Claudine Murray was found dead in her apartment, an apparent suicide. Her journals told another story. Claudine had been counseling 3 children from different schools, all describing identical abuse rituals. She wrote, "They see the same man, the red mask, the burning cross. They name him Lebeg, the stutterer. The name appears in all 3 cases. Her death was ruled an overdose, but the autopsy, leaked by a former coroner's assistant, noted restraint marks and defensive wounds. In one chilling case from 1987, a mother secretly recorded a conversation with her child, later used in a fringe documentary. The tape, grainy and garbled, captures the child whispering, "We go under the church, we drink the dark water," and then the lights go away. That tape vanished. The documentary was pulled after threats of litigation. In 1992, a whistleblower from within Montreal's Child Services Department anonymously mailed files to a conspiracy zine published out of Halifax. The contents included case logs with recurring terms, Red Room, Underground Chapel, chanting in Latin. Most were dismissed as the ravings of scared children influenced by mass hysteria, but in the margins of one file, scrawled in shaky handwriting, was the phrase, "Clergy sealed it up in '81, still echoing." The panic bled into everyday life. Parents pulled their children from schools. Churches saw spikes in both attendance and vandalism. Fear became a contagion. Montreal bookstores sold out of the Satanic Bible overnight, not to worshippers, but to terrified citizens wanting to understand what they were up against. The city's underground press speculated freely. One issue of La Conscience Noire claimed that members of an elite secret society known as l'Ordre du Signe Rouge were using daycares as ritual access points. Another zine alleged Vatican involvement, suggesting that local priests were being silenced or reassigned for speaking out. Claudine Mireille's sister, Isabelle, tried to reopen the investigation into her death in 1991. Her petition to unseal the journal was denied. When she held a press conference in Parc La Fontaine, only one reporter showed up. No article ran. Weeks later, Isabelle left the province entirely. Audio interviews with former staff from Les Enfants du Soleil, aired briefly on local radio in 1993, included confessions of strange power outages and missing keys. One teacher said, "Sometimes the toys would be rearranged. Whole classrooms flipped, but the cameras caught nothing. That segment was pulled mid-broadcast. Even city workers began whispering. A metro engineer claimed they discovered bricked-off access tunnels beneath Sherbrooke Station, ones not marked on any blueprint. Another crew reported chanting sounds from sealed maintenance ducts. No official comment was made, but a month later, access to those tunnels was quietly restricted. Skeptics blamed moral panic, conservative politics, and media fear-mongering. They were partially right. The 1980s saw a global surge in satanic ritual abuse allegations, nearly all of them eventually disproven or dismissed in court. But Montreal's case never reached court. It vanished instead, into fireproof archives, into retirement, into whispered warnings. A sociology professor at McGill University, Dr. Alain Benoit, published a controversial paper in 1995 titled "The Cultural Amnesia of Evil." In it, he proposed that Montreal's satanic panic represented a form of collective repression, a trauma too abstract to be confronted, too bureaucratically scattered to trace. He described it as an anti-narrative, a story so widely told and so deeply feared it disappears itself. In the margins of his own annotated copy, found after his death in 2006, Benoit scribbled, "I met two of them. They were quiet, smiling, always smiling." To this day, online forums debate what really happened. Some say it was a CIA mind control test. Others believe a real cult infiltrated Montreal's childcare system. A few suggest mass psychogenic illness, a viral hallucination spread by fear itself. But for every rational explanation, there's a parent still haunted by what their child drew. A circle of figures, a red altar, and always the stuttering man in the mask. Even now, that name, Lebesgue, echoes on the edges of fringe documentaries and Reddit threads. His description never changes. Red cloth mask, black suit, slight limp, and a voice that repeats everything. Twice. And then stops. A former child psychologist who worked in Montreal during the height of the panic agreed to speak under a pseudonym. In the recorded interview, she says, "I don't know what was real, but the fear was. The consistency of those children's drawings, the way they spoke about the same things without ever meeting each other, it changed me. The real terror It's not that they lied, it's that someone made them forget. She pauses, lowers her voice. Sometimes I dream about the tunnels, but I've never seen them. And just like that, the panic ends, not with an arrest or a trial, but a whisper in the dark. Some say the city moved on, but ask the right person in the right neighborhood, and they'll tell you, the shadows beneath Montreal still listen, and they remember what the rest of us tried to forget. October 4th, 1967, Nova Scotia. At 11:20 p.m., lights were seen falling from the sky over the small fishing village of Shag Harbour. What looked like a low-flying aircraft emitted a series of rapid orange flashes before crashing into the cold Atlantic waters. Locals thought it was a plane going down. They called it in, and what followed was the only officially documented UFO crash in Canadian history. Fishermen raced to the impact site. They expected wreckage, survivors, something. But the surface held only a strange, shimmering yellow foam and silence. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police responded. So did the Canadian Coast Guard. And when no airplane was found missing, the file was labeled UFO Report, Non-Aircraft Incident. The terminology wasn't speculation, it was policy. Multiple declassified memos confirm military protocol required unidentified flying object status if no terrestrial explanation could be confirmed. What made Shag Harbour different was the scale. At least 11 civilian witnesses, 5 RCMP officers, and 3 military personnel signed initial reports. One officer, Constable Ron Pond, saw the lights while driving and described them as a row of 4 or 5 bright lights, moving rapidly downward at a sharp angle. They descended too quickly for a commercial aircraft, but too steadily for a meteor. Then they disappeared below the waterline. Divers were sent in. The Navy combed the ocean floor. Nothing was found. No debris, no oil slick, just the foam, thick, sulfurous, and fluorescent under floodlights. Samples were taken. The results were never released. For days afterward, residents reported a strange humming sound coming from the cove. Some said it was mechanical. Others likened it to a low chant, repeating, rising, and then stopping suddenly. Behind the scenes, something bigger was unfolding. According to recently surfaced Freedom of Information documents from the U.S. National Archives, American naval intelligence monitored the event closely. One memo, dated October 6, 1967, references unidentified submerged activity and confirms joint Canadian-American sonar surveillance along Nova Scotia shelf. Another document lists Shag Harbour under a code word, MAYFLOWERBLUE. The file goes cold for a while. In 1993, former Canadian Navy diver Chris Stiles reopened the case. He interviewed dozens of original witnesses and uncovered internal communications suggesting there was a second recovery operation, further up the coast, near Government Point. According to one witness, they moved something, quietly, at night, under heavy guard. Deeper still, conspiracy researchers point to a supposed transit from Shag Harbour to a secret underwater base near Shelburne. The base officially closed in the 1980s, but rumors persist that sonar signatures picked up something moving, slowly, deliberately, beneath the surface. No official admission ever came, but the incident had ripple effects. One civilian witness, Laurie Wickens, was 17 at the time. He later described seeing men in black suits arriving in unmarked vehicles, warning townsfolk to stop discussing military matters. Local newspapers covered the crash, briefly. Headlines like "Mystery Object Crashes into Harbor" vanished after a week. Coverage dried up. Questions remained unanswered. One reporter, Ron McLeod, attempted to publish a follow-up story in 1974 and was fired shortly after. And then, it happened again. In 1978, near Falcon Lake, Manitoba, a prospector named Stefan Michalak reported a close encounter with a hovering craft. It left behind burns, radiation readings, official reports. Many believe the same group that managed Shag Harbour handled Falcon Lake discreetly and methodically. Both cases remain officially unexplained, and yet traces remain. Locals still speak of strange lights over the bay. Fishermen say the water runs different near the site. Electronics glitch, compass needles spin. Some nights, they claim, you can still hear that humming sound, faint, mechanical, echoing from beneath the waves. The Canadian government maintains the Shag Harbour case is closed, but the documents, the testimonies, the missing samples, they tell another story, and the ocean keeps its secrets. Military logs from the Canadian Forces Maritime Command, now partially declassified, note that all available sonar and hydroacoustic channels were monitored for days following the incident, yet none recorded a crash. Instead, at 2:37 a.m. the next morning, they detected something rising. A sonar ping, described as metallic and artificial, was charted moving from the ocean floor to 75 feet below the surface, before vanishing. The entry ends abruptly, with a redacted line and the initials, USNI. That same morning, an American submarine, identified only as Unit 794, was observed entering Canadian waters without prior notice. It remained offshore for 36 hours. In a leaked recording from a 2001 conference on anomalous naval phenomena, a retired sonar technician known as MH claimed, "Shag Harbour wasn't a crash, it was a retrieval. The thing wasn't destroyed, it left." He paused before adding, or it was helped. Civilian theories multiplied. Some pointed to Operation Plumbob, U.S. underwater weapons testing during the 50s and 60s. Others argued Shag Harbour was a distraction, a planned spectacle to hide classified submersible tests. Theories involving extraterrestrials, time travel probes, or hollow Earth craft took hold in UFO circles. But more quietly, among veterans and retired intelligence officers, a different story circulated. One source, interviewed under anonymity in 2009, said this: "There's a reason no one talks about what was recovered, because it wasn't just alien, it was functioning. It communicated, not with words, with pressure, pulses, like sonar, but emotional. Some of the divers didn't come back the same." Another diver whose records place him in Halifax in October 1967 was treated for unexplained auditory hallucinations months later. His intake form includes the phrase, "Hears drums underwater," says it's trying to remember his name. Public access to the Shag Harbour site is unrestricted, but unofficially, multiple documentary crews have reported drone and camera malfunctions when filming near the original impact point. One crew noted their entire battery pack drained instantly. Another recovered corrupted footage. Just static, then 3 seconds of black water with light flickering beneath the surface. Today, Shag Harbour has a small UFO interpretive center. It displays maps, testimonies, even old RCMP transcripts. But there's a hollow feeling to it, like a museum built too soon, with exhibits missing. The real story may never be shown. Not the strange phone calls that local families received, clicking lines, breath on the other end. Not the sudden military silence. Not the rumors that a second object followed the first, but never emerged. Shag Harbour remains an open case in name only. And like the water that swallowed it whole, what's beneath may never rise again. In 2007, a retired RCMP dispatcher donated a set of reel-to-reel tapes to the Nova Scotia archives. One of them, labeled SH-67 Unverified, captures radio chatter from the night of the incident. The audio is degraded, but audible beneath the static is a voice, tense, clipped, saying, "Object visible below water, lights pulsing, it's not sinking." That tape was never aired. The archive lists it as damaged beyond use. But researchers who've heard it say there's a sound near the end, a deep rhythmic pattern, like breathing through water. No one's been able to replicate it. In Shag Harbour today, most residents don't talk about the crash, not out of disbelief, but fatigue. "We saw what we saw," one old fisherman told a tourist recently. "And then they told us we didn't." The real mystery may not be what crashed, but why we were told to forget.
You came looking for answers, but Canada doesn't give them. It buries them, under river stones, behind church doors beneath the waves. The Nahanni keeps its dead, Montreal forgets on purpose, Shag Harbour just watches. Still, until next time, mortals, this is Tapes of the Lost,